Since the start of the year, Bitcoin's value has risen by more than 80%, leaping from $16,000 to over $30,000. Bitcoin's dominance in terms of market capitalization is nearing 50%, an increase of more than 10 points since January. Can you believe it? We haven't seen such levels in over 2 years. After the excesses of the previous bull market, where most newcomers were investing in just about anything, the market is gradually returning to the fundamentals, back to the mother iode, that is, Bitcoin. For the old-timers, there's nothing new about this. It's at least the third time this has happened. As the years roll by, different cryptos come and go, but Bitcoin always remains in the top spot. The bear market is often a good time for investors to recalibrate. In 2018 and 2019, we already saw a significant rise in Bitcoin's dominance in the crypto market. But beyond these considerations about market trends, the bear market is particularly a perfect period for the builders. When the euphoria subsides, developers can refocus on the fundamentals, and it's often during these bear markets that the truly disruptive innovations are invented, the ones that lead to the next bull market. Speaking of which, today we introduced you to an innovation on Bitcoin that is not talked about nearly enough in the ecosystem, but could very well revolutionize many areas. This invention will significantly simplify the implementation of complex smart contracts on Bitcoin. It will also revolutionize the way we can secure our self-custody funds, thereby facilitating mass adoption. And no, we're not talking about RGB here, but Miniscript. Doesn't that ring a bell? Don't panic, we'll explain everything in this video. So, to understand the potential of Miniscript and grasp how it's going to fundamentally change our relationship with Bitcoin, it's important to revisit the original functioning of Satoshi's invention. As described in its white paper, Bitcoin is simply a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And when we say electronic, it inevitably involves some form of informational programming. In other words, code. For instance, here's a small snippet of Bitcoin Core. As you may know, when you conduct a transaction on the Bitcoin network, you use a pair of cryptographic keys to execute the payment. The public key allows you to receive Bitcoin. It often appears as a receiving address, and the associated private key enables you to spend those same Bitcoin. Now, we often imagine Bitcoin as gold coins with a big B on them. We send and receive them. Our subconscious clings to the current model, to what we know, to what we understand. But this isn't really how this new technology works. To truly understand what we're talking about, I think it's far more pertinent to compare Bitcoin to a piece of land, a sort of digital land stored in the cloud. Think of 1 Bitcoin as 1 square meter of this land. We know that this land will be 21 million square meters. That's the quantity Bitcoin will reach by the year 2140. For your information, we're currently at just under 19 million. 90% of the Bitcoin have been mined, or if you prefer, 90% of the land has been discovered. And let's hypothesize that all the plots of land are perfectly interchangeable, that is, fungible. A private key gives the right to the individual who holds it to use the allotted area of land as they see fit, a sort of title deed, if you will. During a transaction from person A to person B, the Bitcoin don't really move. The only thing that changes hands is a deed of ownership of these Bitcoin, and all this is 100% digital, without any third party. Let's take an example. I own 3 Bitcoin, thus 3 square meters of the Bitcoin land. This means these 3 Bitcoin are usable, unlockable if I may say, with my private key, and my private key only. Now, let's say I want to send 1 Bitcoin to Richard. So, in the transaction, I'll put Richard's public address, which he gave me, and sign my private key. Since I own 3 Bitcoin, the protocol indeed allows me to use 1 Bitcoin and give it to Richard. Now, Richard has 1 Bitcoin and I have 2 left. If Richard then wants to send his Bitcoin, which he just got, to Thibault, for example, he will use Thibault's public address and sign the transaction with his own private key, and so on and so forth. Thibault can now use the Bitcoin as he pleases with his private key. In our little example, the Bitcoin in question changed hands twice, but never really moved. It's the ownership of this Bitcoin that has been changed in the distributed ledger, also called the blockchain. These rules, these instructions, these sending conditions of who owns what are expressed in the case of Bitcoin in a very specific programming language called script. If we delve a bit further into details, the script language materializes through the use of OP codes. Each OP code allows a specific instruction. For example, OP checksig command is one that verifies the validity of a signature on the Bitcoin transaction. There's a whole host of these OP codes, so theoretically, we can already create smart contracts on Bitcoin, those famed smart contracts, by using all these commands. The problem is that programming in script with these OP codes is actually extremely complex, even impossible for sophisticated conditions. It works very well for executing small, generic programs, like carrying out a simple payment transaction. But as soon as complexity increases, the risks of implementing a bug grow disproportionately. It's very difficult to understand exactly what one is programming in Script and all the implications that follow, as it's an intermediate level programming language, almost low level, inspired by Forth, for those who are interested. In fact, Script doesn't resemble any easily comprehensible logical concept at a human level, and yet it's at the heart of Bitcoin. So as soon as we complicate the spending conditions, we can quickly allow things we wouldn't want, like permitting anyone to spend Bitcoin, or simply locking Bitcoin forever in an unspendable script. Basically, no bueno. As a result, with the original Script language, Bitcoin wallet developers are forced to limit themselves to a few basic features, such as sending and receiving. They use templates with only a few OP codes that have proven their robustness over time, but they don't venture further. Miniscript solves this. The project was launched in 2018 by the teams at Blockstream, a company you very likely already heard of, which develops solutions on Bitcoin. This company is well known in the ecosystem, as on one hand, it employs a multitude of contributors to Bitcoin Core, and on the other hand, it's led by cypherpunk and cryptographer Adam Back, the initial inventor of the proof-of-work concept himself. The Miniscript project was led by Peter Wuille, Andrew Palestra, and Sankit Kanjalkar, developers highly recognized in the Bitcoin ecosystem. To give you an idea of the level of these gentlemen, Peter Wuille and Andrew Palestra are among others behind the libsecp 256K1 library, a software library for executing primitive cryptographic operations. You probably don't know this name, but this library is a cornerstone of numerous cryptos, including Ethereum. In fact, some of the most sensitive parts of Ethereum were invented and maintained by Bitcoiners. But let's get back to our Miniscript innovation. What is it in concrete terms? To simplify, you could say that Miniscript is a kind of toolbox that provides a framework for securely coding scripts on Bitcoin. It's a subset of Bitcoin scripts, which implements the most useful features with logical operators in a form that's easier to understand, write, and most importantly, analyze by a human. We use what we call policies to easily define spending conditions. These policies can then be compiled into Miniscript, and Miniscript is a one-to-one equivalent to native scripts on Bitcoin. Instead of completely changing the programming language, Miniscript allows for the necessary bridge to make Script do exactly what we want it to do. This will therefore allow for the development of complex applications on Bitcoin within a secure framework. And of course, this small, overlooked tool is going to bring about major changes in how we interact with Bitcoin in the years to come. One of the essential properties of Miniscript is that it allows you to know exactly what possibilities the used core provides, and this in any context. Let me explain here. When a developer uses the original Script language to program a Bitcoin wallet, if they use some exotic OP codes, they can verify that their script works, but they won't know the limit of this script. Perhaps they've just unknowingly allowed anyone on Earth to spend the Bitcoin locked up within their wallet. On the contrary, with Miniscript, developers can both verify that their program works and also what it allows in absolute terms. For example, if we define with Miniscript that it's Alice's key that allows the unlocking of the Bitcoin, then it will only be Alice's key that can unlock these Bitcoin. With Script, it's almost impossible to verify that there aren't any other unknown ways to spend Alice's Bitcoin, especially with complex OP codes. So in short, with Miniscript, Bitcoin wallet developers can program some crazy things while sleeping soundly at night. That's correct. The aim of Miniscript is to significantly facilitate and enhance the security of Bitcoin development at the application level. Developers can now use this toolkit to create innovative features that can revolutionize how we interact with Bitcoin. And some of these applications are already starting to emerge. Miniscript has been available since May 2023 with the release of Bitcoin Core version 25, hence why it's being discussed now. One of the first practical applications of Miniscript is in securing Bitcoin. We already see this with the LIANA software, for example, a wallet developed by the Wizard Sardine team, which uses the full power of Miniscript to enable everyday people to implement advanced security systems for their Bitcoin. LIANA implements spending conditions such as time blocks, declining multisigs, and recovery keys. Instead of simply, if I can say, securing your Bitcoin with a single pair of key backed up by a 12 or 24-word phrase, you can envision much more sophisticated and less risky security strategies. I'm going to provide you with some practical examples of Bitcoin wallet setups so you can understand what you can achieve with software like LIANA thanks to Miniscript. For example, you can create a wallet that allows a user's Bitcoin to be spent with a primary key, like a ledger. Let's call this ledger A, and also permits spending with a different ledger, let's call this one ledger B, but with a 1-year time lock on it. In this example, it means you can use your ledger A on a daily basis for your transactions. You don't need to keep the recovery phrase for this ledger A because, in case of an issue, you can use ledger B to retrieve your Bitcoin. However, this ledger B is obliged to wait a full year before it can actually spend your funds. So, if someone steals the 24-word recovery phrase for ledger B, you've got some time to act with your ledger A to prevent your Bitcoin from being stolen. This kind of setup might seem complex, but trust me, it's not as complicated as it sounds, and more importantly, it allows you to eliminate the single point of failure that the 24-word recovery phrase presents without losing the ability to recover your funds in case of a problem. Here's another telling example. With LIANA, you can create a threshold multi-sig wallet with, let's say, 3 ledgers, but which only requires any 2 out of the 3 keys to spend the Bitcoin. You can also set the software so that after 1 year, the multi-sig allows your Bitcoin to be spent with just a single ledger key instead of 2. With this kind of setup, you can keep 2 ledgers for you for making daily transactions without any time lock and without requiring anyone's approval. You could then give the 3rd ledger to a family member. As long as a 1-year time lock hasn't elapsed, your family cannot access your Bitcoin. However, if something were to happen to you, your family would be able to safely inherit your Bitcoin after a 1-year wait, thanks to the 3rd ledger. This setup is what we called a decaying multisig, and the possibilities for customization are endless. If you'd like to explore the possibilities offered by Miniscript and run some tests, you can find an interactive graph on the Bitcoin Dev Kit website. These practical examples illustrate how Multiscript is revolutionizing our interaction with Bitcoin. And here, I've only given you 2 examples, but the possibilities are vast. Thanks to software like LIANA that utilizes Miniscript, we can easily adjust our Bitcoin wallet with the exact spending conditions that suit us. It will enable the everyday user to maintain their Bitcoin independently without any trusted third party, while minimizing the risk of loss or theft. Also, it will simplify the inheritance process. The generic public will be able to benefit from many advantages of Bitcoin self-custody while remaining relatively at ease. Hardware wallet manufacturers are not ignoring this. After initially overlooking Miniscript, they're all starting to implement it, especially since the merge with Bitcoin Core. As of now, Miniscript is available on Ledger and Spectre DIY devices. However, JAD, Bitbox, Passport, and Coldcard have also announced they're working on implementing it. Other manufacturers like Trezor are expected to follow suit in response to growing demand for Miniscript. I'm sharing these practical examples in the realm of self-custody because it's one of the most logical applications of Miniscript, and it's what's currently available to everyone. But it's important to understand that Miniscript has expanded the field of possibilities for Bitcoin development. In the future, many other applications we can't even imagine today will rely on Miniscript to revolutionize our use of Bitcoin. This kind of innovation is incredibly promising for long-term public adoption. Don't be fooled, just because the pot is not boiling doesn't mean nothing is cooking. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, truly disruptive technical innovations are developed during these calm phases of a bear market, when the euphoria of the crypto market has died down. The preparation for the next bull run starts today.